He didn't scream, didn't curse, didn't ask for forgiveness. When the guards opened the door that morning, Andrei Chikatilo was already awake, sitting on the edge of his bunk, staring at the wall as if he could see through it. Outside, the winter sky over Rostov-on-Don was pale and empty. February 14th, 1994. A day of hearts and roses for most of the world. But here, inside a gray Soviet prison, the last chapter of one of history's most chilling killers was about to close. Andrei Romanovich Chikatilo was born on October 16, 1936, in a tiny Ukrainian village called Yabloknoy. It was a brutal time to be alive. Ukraine was still bleeding from Stalin's engineered famine. The Holodomor and hunger haunted every home. Chikatilo's mother often told him stories, horrifying ones, about neighbors who disappeared and children who were eaten when food ran out. She claimed his older brother, Stepan, had been kidnapped and devoured by starving peasants. Whether it was true or not, the image stuck. His father, Roman, was drafted into the Red Army during World War II and captured by the Germans. When he returned years later, he was labeled a traitor for allowing himself to be taken alive. The shame clung to the family. At school, young Andrei was bullied, beaten, mocked for his stutter and poor eyesight. He grew quiet, withdrawn, frightened of the world around him. There was one thing he feared more than the world, though: himself. At 15, he tried to be intimate with a girl for the first time. He couldn't. The humiliation scarred him deeply. The laughter of that night replayed in his head for decades. Something dark began to grow inside him, whispering that violence could give him what tenderness could not. By the 1960s, Chikatilo had learned to hide in plain sight. He studied engineering, got a steady job, and in 1963 married a woman named Faina. Together, they had 2 children. To outsiders, they were the perfect Soviet family: small apartment, steady income, quiet evenings by the radio. But behind that facade, the monster waited. His impotence humiliated him. He turned to pornography and fantasy, imagining control, power, pain. As a teacher, he began to touch students inappropriately. Each time he was caught, he moved to another school, another district. The complaints were whispered away. Soviet bureaucracy preferred silence over scandal. In 1978, the silence shattered. It happened in the industrial town of Shakhty. A 9-year-old girl named Yelena Zakitnova disappeared on her way home from the store. Witnesses remembered seeing her with a tall, awkward man wearing glasses. That man was Chikatilo. He lured her to a small shack near the train tracks, promising candy. There, something snapped. He strangled her, mutilated her body, and dumped her in a nearby river. Police arrested another man, 25-year-old Alexander Kravchenko, who had a prior rape conviction. He was beaten, coerced into a confession, and executed. The real killer walked free, watching the newspapers report another man's death for his crime. That feeling of escaping judgment, of outsmarting everyone, ignited something in him. The next few years were quiet, or seemed that way. Then, in 1981, a 17-year-old girl named Larissa Tkachenko was found in the woods, brutally mutilated. She had been stabbed dozens of times. Her eyes were slashed. That was Chikatilo's signature. He believed his victims' eyes captured his image, so he cut them out. His methods grew more savage. He found victims at train stations, bus stops, and markets: runaways, students, drifters, children. He offered food, shelter, kindness, then dragged them into the forest. He stabbed, cut, bit, and mutilated their bodies in acts that mixed rage with twisted sexual release. Sometimes, he'd eat parts of his victims. It wasn't hunger, it was possession. The killings spread across Rostov, Novoshakhtinsk, and the surrounding regions. And still, nobody believed a Soviet citizen could commit such acts. Serial killers, they said, were a Western disease. By 1983, the number of victims had grown too high to ignore. Moscow sent Major Mikhail Fedosov to lead the case, assisted by a young investigator named Viktor Burakov. They didn't know it yet, but they were chasing one of the most prolific killers in Soviet history. Forensic evidence was scarce. Witness descriptions varied, and the local police, under pressure to show progress, tortured confessions out of random suspects. None of them were real. Then came a small detail. The semen samples from the crime scenes showed type AB blood. When police arrested Chikatilo in 1984 for suspicious behavior, his blood tested as type A. So they released him. The mistake would cost more than a dozen lives. Freed from suspicion, Chikatilo resumed his job as a traveling supply clerk, which gave him perfect freedom to roam. Between 1985 and 1990, the bodies kept coming, boys, girls, women. Some found in the snow, others half buried in forest mud. Each murder followed a pattern, but with subtle differences, like a composer experimenting with variations on a single, grotesque theme. By the late 1980s, Soviet society itself was crumbling. Gorbachev's reforms, glasnost and perestroika, were loosening the iron grip of secrecy. The press started to whisper about a maniac haunting Rostov. Parents stopped letting their children travel alone. The air felt poisoned with fear. Then, in 1990, the predator slipped. November 6, 1990. Rostov train station. A man in a gray coat was seen talking to a young girl, pacing nervously. His name raised an old red flag in police files. Andrei Chikatilo, the man questioned years ago. Detectives placed him under surveillance. 2 weeks later, on November 20th, they arrested him again. At first, he denied everything. Calm, polite, almost bored. But investigator Burakov had an idea. He brought in psychiatrist Dr. Alexander Buchanovsky, who had profiled the killer years earlier. Buchanovsky didn't interrogate him. He spoke gently, almost respectfully. He told Chikatilo he wanted to understand, not condemn. That broke the wall. For days, Chikatilo talked. Hours of calm, horrifying detail. He confessed to 56 murders. He described each one like he was reading from a diary. Dates, locations, methods, even the smell of the earth where he buried them. He led police to remains they hadn't even found yet. It was the nightmare's end, but also its full revelation. April 14th, 1992. Rostov Regional Court. The room was a furnace of hate. Families of victims filled the seats, their faces pale with rage. Reporters pressed close, and in the center stood a metal cage, the kind used for wild animals. Inside it sat Andrei Chikatilo. He looked small, fragile. His glasses slid down his nose as he scribbled notes. When the charges were read, he laughed, shouted nonsense, even exposed himself to the courtroom. It was part madness, part performance. The judge barely concealed his contempt. The defense argued insanity. Psychiatrists disagreed. He knew what he was doing. He chose to do it. The trial dragged on for months. By October 15th, 1992, the verdict was inevitable. Guilty on 52 counts of murder. Sentenced to death. When the judge read the sentence, the room erupted in applause. Some shouted, "Shoot him now." Prison life broke him slowly. Gone was the smirk, the arrogance. For 16 months, he lived in isolation. No family, no visitors. Just newspapers and silence. Guards said he rarely spoke. Some nights they heard him whispering, sometimes names, sometimes prayers, sometimes nothing at all. He wrote letters to his lawyer, claiming he'd been mistreated. He begged for psychiatric help. But deep down, he knew there would be no reprieve. He had built his own grave long before that prison cell. February 14th, 1994. Rostov-on-Don. The guards came for him before dawn. The corridor was cold, the air thick with disinfectant and dust. "Chikatilo," the warden said. "It's time." He nodded once. No resistance, no emotion, just resignation. He was led to a small, windowless room, bare concrete, a chair, a drain in the floor. He didn't say a word. He didn't cry. The officer behind him loaded the pistol. There was a click, then a single, sharp gunshot. The bullet entered the back of his head. His body dropped forward, twitching once, then still. Andrei Romanovich Chikatilo, the Rostov Ripper, was dead. The file was closed that same morning. His body was buried in an unmarked grave somewhere near the prison. No flowers, no name. Just dirt. Russia exhaled. But the relief was uneasy. People still avoided the forests near Rostov. Parents still told their children, "Don't talk to strangers. Evil leaves stains that don't wash away easily." Dr. Buchanovsky, the psychiatrist who had helped capture him, later said, "He wasn't born a monster. He was shaped by hunger, humiliation, and a system that taught him nothing human." Maybe, or maybe he was proof that sometimes darkness doesn't need a reason. It just waits for a chance. They say he didn't look afraid when he died. That maybe, in that last moment, he felt peace. But can a man like that ever truly find peace? Or did the silence of that room only echo the screams of those who never got to see the sunrise again?